Hello there, welcome to today's video. Today we'll be looking into the Englund Gambit and some of the finest traps that it has to offer you. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. And we have D4 on move 1. If you're like me, you do not enjoy seeing this on the first move. It's just not as fun as E4 or even some other moves on the first move. Most people will counter with D5, or I've seen Knight F6, maybe even G6, and they don't tend to be that much fun. They're just solid, and that's about it. It's just very solid. Now, if you want an interesting option to counter that, I'm going to present you with E5. And at first glance, it looks like this simply loses you a pawn, and it does, for now. They're going to take the pawn. Overwhelmingly most popular move right there. And here's the trick. The first one we're going to look at here. We trot out bishop c5. That's the 5th most popular move for black, and it won't necessarily be expected by your opponent. Now, we're going to continue with the most common move here, which would be Knight f3. And to further go into this trap, we play d6. Not the best engine move, not the most common move necessarily, but it plays into this trap. And they are almost always going to take, because that's the natural move. And now this next move is going to be unexpected, and you need to play it quickly so that it seems like you pre-moved it or mouse slipped it as if you weren't expecting the pawn to be here. You play knight e7, okay? We've already given away 2 pawns, and now we offer them a knight. If you've played it quickly so far, they're going to assume that you are simply giving away your pieces, because that's what it looks like. It looks like you're throwing your pieces away and just trying to lose, but that is not the case here. Overwhelmingly popular move, pawn takes knight. Now see if you can find the trick. It's right here. It's very, very nice, okay? Yet another sacrifice. We go bishop takes f2, check. White is in check here. They have to get out of check, and the only way out is to take the bishop. The only legal move for white here is king takes f2, and now we simply take the queen, and look at this. After all the sacrificing we have done, we now have won white's queen, and we have our queen on d1, so we threaten their bishop and their c2 pawn immediately. The e7 pawn is already threatened. The only real downside is we gave up several pieces to do this, and we still have to develop all of our other pieces, but that's not really an issue long term, as long as we can keep our current pieces safe, especially our queen, and as long as we can quickly develop the pieces we still have on the board, we're going to be just fine. Like, we're looking at a quick knight c6, bishop g4, perhaps knight takes e7, followed by castling. You're going to get all your pieces out to safety, and you're going to have an active queen. They're not going to have a queen at all. So this is really a fantastic trap line. If it goes this far, you are going to win the large majority of your games. I definitely recommend that, but it's no guarantee that it goes that far. The d4, e5, takes, bishop c5. Not everyone is going to play knight f3. You're going to have some people play a move like bishop f4 or knight c3, just something else. Even if they do play knight f3 and you play into the trap, it's entirely possible that they ignore it with a move like bishop f4, in which case I recommend you play knight c6 in the hopes that they still go and take this, and if they do, you should very quickly go knight e7 and hope that they capture your knight, in which case you're back in the same position where you win white's queen after they are forced to move the king away. So still a very nice trap. The only concern is it's not guaranteed. Alright, what if they play e3 right here? Now you're out of hope here. They're not going to play into your trap. They've blocked your bishop off from f2. You no longer have the trick, so you're going to have to fall back and take here. And while the evaluation will favor white here, as it should, given that they are up a pawn and you have no more tricks, this isn't really a bad worst case scenario. Oftentimes they're going to just trade bishops, you take back, they're going to develop, you can go queen b6, and you still have some play here on the b file. They're probably going to guard the pawn, your bishop is going to come out here, and your pieces are going to be active. It's not enough to fully compensate for a pawn, but if your opponent doesn't play like Stockfish and you play a few good moves with your pieces, you're going to get a decent position. Say they go here to guard the pawn, you come pin the knight, most people will castle, you can go bring the rook to the center, they're going to bring their knight out, probably to here, you can go slow move like this. How are they supposed to make progress here? Your pieces are a little bit better than theirs. It's not great, it's close to even, a little better for white, but this is the main downside if you play this trap with black, is if they know exactly what they're doing, you're going to be facing a middle game where you're simply down a pawn, and all you can do is hope that they can't find a way to attack. And granted, this is not an easy position for them to attack in. If anything, you have better attacking chances long term, but still, If you don't want to play into this trap line where if they play accordingly, you're not getting anything, there is an alternative. I'll take you back to the beginning with d4, e5. They're going to take, and I can offer you a second move here. The far more well-known move right now, as opposed to bishop c5, and remember, bishop c5 is 5th most played move, so it's not going to be especially well-known. But the most played move is knight c6. All right, and this is very common in the Englund Gambit, where white will reply with knight f3 to guard their pawn. You will go queen e7, and here's the deal. All right, if they do not defend e5, you're more than happy to capture, and it'll favor them ever so slightly. Say they go knight c3, for example, and you take right here, it will favor white just a little bit. They don't really have anything special here. It's not anything to worry about. And in fact, most people make the inaccuracy of trading knights and giving your queen this wonderful spot in the center of the board. You can watch the eval bar there. It's going closer and closer to equal. You've got a queen in the center. You're looking to bring your bishop out to b4. You can get some pressure on this knight. In fact, I'll take this a little bit further. The most played move by white here is e4, which is also not very accurate. You play bishop b4. Most people reply with bishop d2. And I mean, if you want to get the pawn back, or sorry, you already got the pawn back. If you want to gain a pawn here, you can take the knight and then take on e4. And then you're in a position where you're up a pawn. Perhaps your opponent has more play and space with their pieces, but you're up a pawn at least. That's got to be something, especially if you're playing a speed chess game. If you want to take it slowly, you can go knight f6, and you can build toward a d5 as well, and you can just say you have a lot of play here. And if this is what you're getting, if they decide to just let you take back the pawn, go back right here. If they don't defend e5 and you get to take it, and you get into that position, I don't think we're really complaining much, because this is a massive upgrade of playing a boring old Queen's Gambit or London system. And that's largely the idea when you go back to move 1 and you play e5. The main point is you don't let white do what they want to do. Most of the time, white plays d4, they want a Queen's Gambit, or they want a London system. Most of us don't want to play against that. It's no fun. We tried out e5 here, and we completely changed the game. Completely different dynamic, and most of the time, people are going to fall for the traps. And speaking of which, we are going to keep going, and I want to show you guys the main idea here. If they do decide to defend the pawn, the main move is bishop f4. By far the most popular move, and it is the correct move as well at that, but it plays right into the mainline theory, where we play queen b4 check. All right, now look what's going on here. We check the king, we attack their bishop, and we attack the b2 pawn. So they have 3 pieces in danger here. They can only defend 2 at a time. All right, they must defend the king, and preferably they will defend the bishop too, because who wants to be down a bishop, right? The best move and main move is bishop d2, which I will come back to in a moment. There are some other moves people have played here. Like queen d2 is a move that people try, but it's really, really bad because you take on b2 with the rook. Now you're unable to save it. It's going to be captured next move. And funny enough, people actually make it worse most of the time. Like by far, the most played move here is queen c3. And I'm sure you can see the problem with this. Just look at how the queen and the king are lined up on the diagonal. Bring out your bishop to b4. That's good game. Most people are resigning on the spot right there, and it's only move 6. So that's completely ridiculous. Queen d2, completely losing. If people play that, you can start celebrating, but you still have to find the right moves. Anywho, another move people have tried hundreds of thousands of times, surprisingly, is c3. Come take the free bishop. We're not complaining with a free bishop. If they give it to you, you take it every time. Same with knight d2, which is also about as popular as c3. Hundreds of thousands of games have gone with knight d2 there. Take the free bishop and say thank you. More than happy with that. And that brings us to the 2 main moves. All right, there's knight c3, which is more dangerous than it looks. You might see that and go, ha, they hung the bishop. We're going to take it. Well, it's a little more dangerous than that. Most people don't realize this, funny enough. Most people play e3, which you go queen b4 to pin the knight, and you're simply up a bishop for a pawn. But if they know their theory and they go knight d5, this is just a little more dangerous than anticipated because they now attack your queen and they threaten your pawn with a fork once they capture it. And you have to be very careful to get to a playable position here. If you make one wrong move, it could be really, really bad for you. But if you know what you're doing, it's fine. You play queen e4, and you allow this to happen. Not what you would prefer, but it's really not a big deal, and I'll show you why. All right, first you capture on e5, so you've gained a pawn. Most people, by far, 70% of the time, I believe, are going to trade the knights. It's already equal here, and the main reason why is this knight is going nowhere. You're going to be able to win that knight pretty quickly. I mean, if it came down to it, you could go queen b8, queen takes knight. That's not usually what needs to happen, though. Most people right now play c3 to guard b2, which I don't think is super necessary, but that is what most people play. And now you want to play, instead of this queen b8 move, because it's kind of an unpleasant move, although it's effective, you'd rather go with b5. The point being, well, you're going to go bishop b7 and then take the knight there. And also, that's just a fantastic diagonal to have your bishop on. So I'll take it a little further. I'm putting in the most popular moves by white. That's e3 here, bishop b7. And white likes to go knight b6 here, so they're saying, okay, you get my knight, but now you have doubled up pawns. I don't think that's necessarily a problem, because we get to this position, it actually favors black a little bit right here. Just a little bit. And it's more pleasant for black is the point. All right, you have your queen in the center of the board. You have a bishop on a fantastic diagonal. In fact, it's keeping this bishop from moving in the fear that they lose the g2 pawn. White doesn't really have any pieces developed. They don't even have a pawn in the center. They don't really have anything really good for them here. I think their best move is probably to go queen d4 and trade off the queens and hope for the best in an endgame. And if that's their best plan, they're probably not super happy with, right? They would rather have their own play. They would like to go bishop d3 and castle, but they can't because if they move the bishop, again, they drop this pawn. If they play all the correct moves and you get into this position, this is on move 12, this is not at all a bad position for you to be in. You basically have a bishop and a knight in exchange for a rook that probably isn't going to be active super soon. Meanwhile, your bishop and knight can get active basically immediately. And don't even worry about your king's safety either. If that's a big concern to you, look around at their pieces, right? They don't really have a way to come after your king. They don't have enough pieces. They don't have any active pieces. Maybe they could go queen d2, rook d1. That's 2 moves to threaten. d7, but you can stop that with one. One move is all it takes. Your king is plenty safe at this point. No need to worry. There are no problems with this. Now, I do want to go back to this position, because there's one other critical move. Not everyone is going to play knight c3. In fact, that's only the second most popular move. Most people do play bishop d2. And we do have some intriguing lines here. You are going to grab the b2 pawn. And you can notice the evaluation bar going up for white. And that's because if white plays the best moves, it is going to be good for them. But there is upside here. In fact, a lot of people, especially if they see this for the first time, I can almost guarantee you, if they see this for the first time, they will try bishop c3. In which case, you play bishop b4, point being you pin their bishop to the king. They think they're attacking your queen. No, not anymore. You pin the bishop, and you're going to be pretty happy with this. They either have to take here, in which case you go knight takes bishop, and then knight is coming to c2, or queen is going to take the rook, or they go knight a3, and you have to take the knight instead, and that's also a win because you're gaining material. Or right here, I've seen some people try queen d2, which you really hope for, because now you take the bishop, and a lot of people will make the mistake of taking with their queen thinking, okay, I'm guarding my rook. If black takes the rook, white takes the queen. But that hangs mate in 1. So I don't think that's what white wants. I think that's definitely what black wants, though. We would be thrilled with this position. Back here, if they take with their knight, which they probably should at this point, you take the rook with check. You're up a rook for absolutely nothing. No complaints here. Fantastic position. Now, we'll go back a little bit. That is the hope, if you get into this position, that they play bishop c3. Almost any move is going to be losing, given that their rook is trapped in the corner. The only good move for white here is knight c3, which I don't think anyone's going to find unless they've actually looked at this before, in which case, let me take you a few moves deeper, all right? I'm going to advise you to play bishop b4, and now white needs to find rook b1, otherwise it's a little better for black. You play queen a3, and then here, I'm going to give you the most popular move again. That's what I'm trying to do for all of white's moves. White usually plays rook b3, which they shouldn't. You go queen a5, following popular moves again, e3, bring your knight to e7, they bring their bishop out, and we get a position like this. All right, so you didn't gain material like you wanted to. The material is even here, actually. It does favor white a little bit, because white has all their pieces developed. Some of their pieces are in really good squares. Meanwhile, black is going to have some difficulty developing the light squared bishop, and we feel like there's not a ton to play for, and you're going to have to find some good moves, but that's what I'm here to show you. All right, we find our next good move with knight d5, and most people will actually just trade everything off right here. And if you get into this position, it's just completely equal. You don't really have to worry about a whole lot. You're even threatening the e5 pawn right here, and then taking the knight with check. So you get this position. I don't think you're complaining too much. This is a very nice position where you don't really have any weaknesses. I will tell you the one thing to watch out for is make sure not to castle into this tactic where you would lose your queen. That is the one real worry here, is that you missed that. But that should be easy enough to handle. Hey, in this position, I think you're more interested in taking the free pawn instead. You take the free pawn, you're going to be in good shape. And I mean, right here, they don't really have many ways to guard this pawn. It would either be queen c3 or maybe rook b5. And rook b5 doesn't work since it drops you the pawn on a2. Queen c3 is probably their best move. It's just not a very attractive move. If they do play it, follow up with b6 and work on getting your bishop onto this diagonal. And keep your queen in the center if allowed. If attacked, though, you're going to find squares to move to. You could go to a5, perhaps you go to e6. It's not a bad spot for your queen. So you're going to get a pretty pleasant position. The material is equal, but they have doubled pawns, and the e5 pawn is a target of yours. Meanwhile, you don't really have any major weaknesses at this point. So if this is really the most realistic worst-case scenario you could get into, sign me up. I'm all in for this. I'm going to start playing this for sure. I think this has a lot of potential, especially in speed chess. So I definitely recommend looking into this. And that's all I got for you on the Englund Gambit Traps today. Be sure to look into this. You should definitely give it a try. I think you will find a ton of success with it. It does come with some risk if your opponent happens to play like Stockfish, and if they do, I don't know what to tell you there. If they are playing like Stockfish, just report them. I mean, let's be honest. But that's all I got for you on the Englund Gambit. Hope you learned a thing or two. Congrats on learning how to play these Englund Gambit traps. If you're interested in learning how to crush the fried liver attack, by the way, then click this video here. All right, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video.